Welcome to the Daniel Cleland podcast. Plant medicine. Entrepreneurship. Expat living. The Daniel Cleland podcast.
Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Today I have a very interesting and special guest, Soltara alumni, podcast host, conscious leadership coach, Amanda Bucci, female entrepreneur. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here. You described me as interesting, which is people don't usually choose that word, but I'm glad to be interesting.
Well, I mean, you're a very highly motivated young lady. You're involved in entrepreneurship and in creating media and in helping other. I'm not sure if you coach women and men, but you definitely coach women to succeed. I know a couple of our mutual friends are working with you, like Whitney Miller, right? She's very excited to be working with you.
Yeah.
And
Great.
of course, we had a short interview when you were at Soltara last year.
Mhm.
That was, that was like over a year
Just
ago.
about a year ago. Yeah. A year. It was a New Year's.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it was awesome.
If you only knew what you were getting into for 2020, right? On that New Year's Eve.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that I got to end the year that way and start fresh because I needed it to prepare for what was to come, which was very beneficial.
So how did 2020 shape up for you? Because, for some people it was like the best year of their life, and for other people it was like the worst year of your life, and some people just kind of continued on doing their thing.
Yeah, it was. I feel like a lot of people had a combination of both, like some of the most challenging things they've ever been through, but a lot of people have also had some of the best things they've ever experienced. And it was definitely that for me. There was really, really difficult things, mostly not necessarily in my business, like the coaching business continued to do really well. And I'm in the middle of writing a book right now, which is just personal and doesn't get affected by anything on the outside until it's out there. And then I'm in the middle of launching a new personality quiz entrepreneurial archetype business. So that's again to the side. So things kind of normalized for me in business, but in personal life, um, a lot of things happened. A lot of just like internal, lots of ego deaths. What I can describe it, lots of shadow work in my life, which has been highly beneficial. But in the middle of it all, it was extremely challenging, as it is. So yeah, it was a mixed bag. But I do feel like a more strong and capable and resilient person on the other side of it.
So then when you left Soltara at the beginning of 2020, you and John explained, John is still
My
your
partner.
partner? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congrats on that. Another year and a half, year and a bit in the bag. That's
Yeah.
good for you guys. So what was your journey like after you left Soltara? You went through our integration program, and we didn't get to talk about any of that because obviously you were still at Soltara when we talked. So
Yeah. No, the integration has definitely been a huge word for me this year, and that really kicked off the process after the journeys that we went through. And um, it was, as it goes, quite the upheaval for me in what it brought up on an internal level. So it did require me to do a good bit of integration thereafter to really um, not just maintain what I experienced, but to really transform the way that I was thinking, feeling, behaving, and taking everything that I experienced and really implementing it into my life. And it was challenging in the beginning, but it eventually turned into this changed way or changed sense of self, or an altered or upgraded kind of version of me, which feels really, really awesome. And it also kind of catalyzed this really interesting experience I've been having with a lot of my journeys as of late, where one of the things that I experienced, which didn't really seem particularly profound at the time in terms of any like information that was going to help me along my journey, but after having looked back over this year, I've had a lot of journeys, and the first one was with ayahuasca at Soltara, where I experience in the medicine space like a highly sensitive experience of feeling energy and feeling my energy centers open up and almost experiencing the human body doing all of the involuntary physiological processes that it just does without us knowing them. So I've become this like highly sensitive person in medicine spaces where I'm like burping and sweating, and I'm like doing body work on myself intuitively, and I'm just like sensing so much in my body. So it's like a very somatic experience. And looking back now, just having the conversation with you, I didn't even realize it, but it's become something that is become a core tenant in my medicine experiences as of late. So it's still something I'm working on, but it's almost like it catalyzed an increased sensitivity, which has allowed me to be more discerning about what's in my space and what's mine and what's not. So that's been a huge thing.
Do you follow Ed Milet at all?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I've been listening to a lot of his stuff lately. And he he talks a lot about this concept that I find really super relevant and very easy to understand. The concept of how our self concept, our own self identity, our own self conception affects how we operate in the world, and what surrounds us in the world and the people that surround us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on.
Yeah.
And he uses the thermostat example. So it's like, if you look at the thermostat in your home, say it's set to 72 degrees, and if the room cools down to 60 degrees, then the heater kicks on and heats up the room to 72. And if the room gets hotter than 72 degrees, goes up to 80 degrees, air conditioning kicks on and brings it down to 72. And a lot of us operate at that kind of room temperature, the 72 degrees. But if you look at, the people who achieve the most in life and are the most successful, they operate at a hotter temperature. So maybe they're running at 100 degrees or 150 degrees. And if they get down to, 72 degrees, their heater flips on and they're heating up the room. So it's interesting you mentioned that in your ayahuasca experience, you had some what sounded like upgrades to your self conception, self identity.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That's a really cool. Yeah, I think about things in that way as well. Just um the way that you see yourself. It's so automatic. It's so unconscious. It's so just what I experienced was also just how much the body is doing without us even knowing it, because I was experiencing so much of what it was doing with the ayahuasca having had opened me up. So with that, it's like so much is happening without us even realizing what we're doing or how we're doing it. And people talk about your vibration is a choice, or your relationship to certain things and how you react and interact is a choice. And I agree to some extent, but I also things are automatic. Things we don't always recognize what's unconsciously occurring. And until we bring conscious awareness to that and then learn how to work with the things that feel like so important, or they feel like needs, or they feel like we can't not do something, or we can't avoid experiencing something because it feels so important for us to have it. And until we look at like what's actually happening there, what's the unconscious driver and the thing that feels so intertwined with the fabric of who we actually are. And think that medicines like ayahuasca can really bring out like, okay, let me see and look at this fabric, and let me like unravel what's really intertwined in here. And do I still need this? Is this still serving me?
Yeah. Yeah. Amen to that. I mean,
Yeah.
the efficiency and functionality of our body is
Yeah.
is such an underlying factor to how we feel. I mean, like our happiness, our emotional well-being, and the energy that we have in the world, and the ability that the ability that we have to go out and achieve what we want to achieve. And
Mhm.
if you don't take care of that body, then all the other things suffer. So, yeah, I think,
Yeah.
a lot of people in my experience see this work with the medicine as kind of like a diagnostic on the body. Like everything is amplified. All these different little
Right.
feelings are amplified, and you can it's like
Right.
in some cases you can feel if there's an energetic blockage, or you can feel if there's something going on in like a joint. And a lot of people talk about healing themselves, just like utilizing the power of the mind and energy
Yeah.
during the ceremony itself.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
100%. Yeah, I've thought about that quite a bit, and the amplification of what's already there is absolutely something that shows up for me almost every single time, and I get to I'm still such a student of it, and we're all so much students of our own experience of ourselves, and um, especially of the medicines that have so much to teach us. But there's for me, I've learned how much information really can live in all of the places in my body that feel stuck, that feel stressed, that feel tension, that feel pain, and starting to work with that type of experience and that type of understanding of myself has created so much such a just an expanded view in considering what can I do to move this energy, or what can I do to learn about what's actually here for me, and can I feel into this pain, or can I feel into this tension, and can I commune with it, and can I understand what it's trying to signal to me.
and try to learn from it and
Yeah,
fix it.
yeah. Yeah, that
um,
too.
what other salient experiences did you get in the ayahuasca space?
Yeah, one of the big ones that I talk about a lot, um, is this experience of it came to me in a very sensory, somatic way that I then later interpreted, which I'll share, but experience that I had was going into this almost what I described as, like, a labor space, and I've never been pregnant, so I don't actually know what labor feels like, but that's the word that came to me, because not necessarily, like, pushing out the baby, but more so the space in between contractions where the woman is in pain and just staying there and hanging out there like, "I'm fucking in this until it's done, and I'm just gonna have to sit in this pain, and, like, how can I." And it wasn't physical pain, it was more like extreme discomfort. Like, sometimes when, the maestros were coming around to sing the Icaros, it, like, hit me in, like, a really gross way, and I just, like, it was, like, super discomfort, like, we were, salt deprived, sweets deprived. The only thing that felt a little comforting was, like, the warm weather in Costa Rica, but, I was, like, wanting to, like, grab onto a pillow, or, like, someone to, like, comfort me, because I was just, like, alone in this kind of yucky discomfort, and I had some nausea, but the nausea wasn't even, like, the primary experience, it was just, like, yucky, like, ugh, like, it was just, like, this gross, and in my mind, I was seeing this, like, what I described as, like, a swamp. It was mucky, and there was, like, black tar, and, like, it was dark and just disgusting, and I interpreted that as the swamp where repressed emotions go to fester and turn into something else. They turn into, like, when we repress or suppress what we're feeling, or, like, what's actually true for us, and for me, I went in and, I grew up Catholic, so I remember going to confession and being like, "If I don't tell the priest, God's not gonna know what I did," you know? So same thing with ayahuasca, I was like, "If I don't write this thing that I didn't wanna talk about on my intentions list, I won't have to look at it, or I won't have to think about it or feel it." And when I went into the ayahuasca, obviously it doesn't work that way. It shows you what's there to show you, what's really true. So it showed me this place where, like, this is what happens when you're not observing or looking at a truth that's, like, eating at you, or that's really causing you pain because of whatever fear you have about what it would mean for you to work through it. So And then I also saw that what happens when we're not looking at what's true, like the thing that we're avoiding, the thing that we don't wanna pay attention to, look at, talk about, it's over here and we know it's true, but we don't really wanna look at it. All of these other things I saw come from that swamp. Like, okay, now I'm gonna give you yucky thoughts and judgments and behaviors, and it's gonna like seep out through you in one way or another. So it was a super interesting visual to see like what can really happen when we're with our emotions and with our truth when we're not looking at it. So that was the biggest thing for me. It was intense.
I know exactly what you're talking about. There's
Yeah,
a special kind of discomfort that you get in an ayahuasca ceremony. You know, it's
special,
just
very special.
it's it can be a bit of a battle, you know, just and it's hard to really define. It's like your body's running hot, you feel sweaty, you feel cold, you can't sit still, you're not comfortable on the mat, you know,
Yeah,
you feel kind of nauseous, and then you know, you kind of want it to stop, but then it's not stopping, and you
yeah,
to
all of that.
me yeah, to me, the value in that has proven itself over and over in life since I started working with the medicine.
Mm,
Um, and being able to go through those periods of discomfort and have the mentality like you described, where it's like, okay, this isn't going away. I just have to deal with it, right? Like I have to get through this, and then you just try to make the best of it while while it's taking place. And I think that builds up resilience, but that builds up mental resilience by doing that,
mhm.
which is very useful for life, right? And if one is more resilient, one feels more confident.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with you.
And also touching on how you identified that swamp of unprocessed emotions, that's another important revelation. You know, we can try to bury the things that we don't want to see, that we don't want to acknowledge, the issues that we don't want to commit to processing, but
Mm,
they don't really go away. They kind of sit there. And then, you know, that works on the subconscious level along with, you know, having an unhealthy body. If you've got an unhealthy body, that works at a subconscious
yeah.
level. If you got unprocessed issues, that works at a subconscious level and is going to affect everything in your periphery, basically.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and the medicine will reveal that to you. It'll bring it out. It'll show you what you're not looking at, and that's absolutely one of the reasons why people are not comfortable with going into that unknown ceremonial space where you're consuming something that's gonna kinda help you access that, and it's not always beautiful and comfortable. It's oftentimes actually not, but like I said, on the other end of that, it did feel like a deep upgrade, like a extreme upgrade of self, upgrade of, integrity, upgrade of, um, ability to move forward with less, patterns running certain things. So the underlying truth got to be accessed. I was forced to commit to process it because it was right in front of me, which I would have had to do anyway, so which I'm grateful, and from there, um, whatever was underneath that that was driving my desire or my need to suppress it got to be looked at as well, for which I'm very grateful. So it's an interesting mistress, Miss Ayahuasca.
Did ayahuasca have any effect on how you work with your clients in the subsequent year?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one of the things that one of the things that I've taken from any medicines, ayahuasca showed me this 100%, was a huge sense of empathy for what people may be experiencing, and I can I've been practicing, and I can almost see what might be driving people at any given moment, and also recognize that whatever I'm seeing is 100% a projection, but recognizing how much is happening with humans at the surface level, at the mid levels, at like the deep, deep core levels. So it's provided me an expansion of my perception of human beings, and especially with everything that's been going on in the world lately, it's been interesting for me because I can see people with such a wide lens, and I can
Mm,
see a lot of different perspectives. And when on the human level, on like the person to person, the systemic oppression level, the level of um, humans are actually, people are in danger right now. There's a lot of really horrible shit going on in the world. On that level, it's like people need to be treated accordingly, and things have to change. And on the, let's just say, more transpersonal or spiritual level, um, there's a perspective I have where I'm just like, I can see how they may have got there based on their
mhm.
trauma or their surroundings or their community or the echo chambers in which we live, where
Absolutely.
different ideas are perpetuated. We have like a divided country for a reason, and it's hard not to see that anymore. So I've been balancing, um, not using that as as a way to spiritual bypass, and also honoring humanity and protecting people and dangerous people and dangerous behavior over here. And then also just I can see a lot that is potentially going on with any given person at any given time.
Man, that's such a useful tool, and it would be so much better if more people were able to consider the nuance of every person
Yeah.
when trying to work with them, or judging them, or trying to make sense of them, because it often is the tip of the iceberg. What you see on the surface is just the tip of the iceberg, and what you've
Mhm.
got below, you've got, you don't know what their pain point is, you don't know what kind of trauma they've experienced in their lives. You don't know what their history has been, what their family life is like. You don't know how many times they've had their heart broken by somebody. And we're these days we're so quick to judge people without even considering the nuance of that individual.
Yeah, I love nuance. If I have one pet peeve, I don't have a whole lot of like pet peeves, but one pet peeve I do have is when people don't consider context and nuance. Because we're, like you said, we're so quick to make full blown human judgments. On the worst level, what we do is we'll literally, a human will do one behavior and we'll put them in the bad human evil forever bucket.
Yeah.
Like you are just a toss away, irredeemable human being, and you're now over there in my head, which is also deeply traumatizing, and it just creates more shame and it creates more separation, and then from there there's so much that gets catalyzed from being shamed and canceled and all of that, which again, not to say that some people shouldn't because they're a danger to society and blah blah blah. But also I definitely think that a lot more can get done if we can incorporate nuance and context and not be so driven by our emotional reactions to things, and be more resilient, and more capable of experiencing a expanded perspective and acknowledging our feelings, seeing that, like, most things are most conflicts are driven by emotion and like deep belief, um and if we can expand our belief system, if we can not just control our emotions, but understand how to work with them. So that's not the core thing that's driving us to take actions or to judge people. And then we can actually understand how human beings work, which I think the medicines do really well. It's help us understand how our human exists in this world. One thing I experienced at Soltara was like the human organism as a being in the ecosystem of other organisms. Like we watch on Animal Planet, like the amoeba that like does this thing, and then there's different relationships with different animals, and like this is how they coexist in the world, and this is their biology, and this is how they mate with others, and this is how they do this. I felt like that with humans, and I was like, oh, this is a human organism, and this is how we interact with the world, and this is how we're disconnected from nature, and this is how we're disconnected from our essence, but also this is how the psyche works, and this is how the body works. And uh, yeah, I think there's so much benefit to having an understanding of how we work on a biological, spiritual, and emotional and mental level to be able to support being able to make better decisions with how we're interacting with other people that we don't agree with.
Absolutely. And if you put that together with processing your emotional issues and keeping your physical body in prime operating condition, you're going to be one powerful human being, right?
Yeah, 100%.
um, so you also mentioned that you worked with a number of different other medicines. Or you mentioned journeys. I'm assuming that meant medicines of different
Yep.
types. What other medicines do you like to work with?
I've done a good bit of psilocybin, um, LSD, ketamine, and I've done a couple of DMT experiences as well. Those were ceremonial. Some of them are ceremonial, some of them are not, but they to me that building relationships with them that allow me to understand myself better has been one of the most powerful and expansive things that I've tools that I've utilized to grow, to heal, to experience more of myself. So I've worked with them over the last 3 years now, so it hasn't been too long, maybe 2. I think going into 3 now. Yeah.
3 years working with various different medicines.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
I have a favorite. Um, yeah, I've had an interesting relationship with each of them. Right now, I'm going through, like I told you in the beginning, this experience where I'm having a lot of, energetic sensitivities, which I'm, like, experiencing as learning how to, feel a lot and then maintain my own energetic boundaries, which essentially means I I'm experiencing, um, like, other people's stuff coming through my body when I'm on, let's just say, LSD or psilocybin. And the way that I've experienced that as of the last, like, 4 to 5 months has been, like, I've been rocked the next day. So my relationship with those 2 specifically have been, have just been like, okay, I'm processing this, like, new level of sensitivity that I have. So they've been wonderful, and I'm, like, not taking a break from them, but it's been it's been more of like, "Okay, let me process what this means for me," which basically means I'm going into them knowing that I'm gonna have, um, I wouldn't say, like, a rough experience, but, like, a physically demanding one,
Mm.
perhaps. So, the one that I've been enjoying lately that I've had some, like, really great processing conversations on it with John, my partner, has been ketamine, which is something I've only recently started maybe, like, 3 months ago or so. And it's been an interesting one. It doesn't, have that same effect on me as, mushrooms or LSD has. It is a dissociative, so it takes me more out of my body than it does, like, keeps me in my body. So I don't have that same physically demanding experience where I'm, like, processing what's going on in my physical self. So, but what it has provided is this, like, it's allowed me to I've been experiencing this great, um vibe shift or like mood shift into a more like neutral space. So if I'm in um if I feel if I've been in like a more stuck space and we've used it for some processing, like emotional processing conversations, there's been a really great ability to maintain this like neutrality, like let's objectively discuss everything that's going on and we can process this with like a different lens, and it's subtle, but it's been really, really awesome to be able to process with that kind of different lens. So that's something that
Mm.
I've been using as of late.
Cool. I've experienced ketamine on a number of occasions. I
Yeah.
haven't done it in a clinical setting though. I have
Okay,
never
cool.
injected it and I've never done it in a clinical setting.
Yeah.
But I have had some profound psychedelic experiences with ketamine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
back in 2017, I was analyzing whether or not to proceed with Soltara, I was quite scared of
Right.
the commitment and how much work it was going to be and the
Yeah.
risk. And I recall being at a friend's birthday party in Ibiza, a 30th birthday party, and we were having some ketamine there, and I had a very deep psychedelic experience, and I didn't even really know that ketamine could be so
Yeah.
psychedelic, but it's as much a psychedelic as anything else. I mean, it's not classified as that, but it can be
Right.
similar.
Right.
And I saw this vision of the finished product. Like I
Mm.
saw this vision of, it wasn't quite accurate. My vision like had other people involved who didn't end up getting involved and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I felt like I had seen the future and that I need to proceed with this now. So,
Yeah.
um,
Right.
so
Yeah, that's
yeah,
really cool.
and I think that was probably the last time that I've had ketamine, 2017. But
Mm.
it's an interesting compound, and a lot of people are talking about it right now. You're seeing a lot of ketamine being included in like anti-aging treatments, like Dr. Craig Conover, who I think you
Mhm.
probably know. Do you know Craig?
No, no, I don't.
No? Oh, okay.
No, I'll go follow him.
He's good. But yeah, I mean, they're mixing ketamine with the NAD treatments that people
Yeah.
are taking, and it's getting a lot of
Yeah.
attention. I did a podcast
Yeah,
with,
Tim Ferriss. Go
go
ahead, go ahead.
ahead.
I'll talk after.
Okay.
I was just
I
gonna say I
just,
listened to, sorry. Zoom is always so funny with the back and forth.
yeah.
You go, and then
Okay.
I'll go.
All right, I'll go. I was just going to say I did a podcast last week with a guy named Peyton Nyquist, who founded Numinous, which is this Canadian company. It's just gotten it went IPO, so it's a publicly traded Canadian company focused on psychedelics, and they literally got federal permission from the Canadian government to work with ketamine and psilocybin and I think MDMA. So,
Yeah, that's great.
it's growing. Now, you
Yeah.
were gonna say something about Tim Ferriss?
Yeah, I listened to one of his podcasts recently about had a whole, I think it was a 2-hour podcast about his childhood sexual trauma that he talked through with a co-host of his, and he was being really thorough about his adding in of little um potential medications and like discussing different tools and modalities and things like that. And he mentioned ketamine for depression. They're studying it for treatment of depression and suicidal ideation, even. And he mentioned like if you're feeling like if you don't have, he was talking about a certain antidepressant medication, and he was talking about how oftentimes there is a period of time where you are still adjusting to the new medicine that you're on. And if there's a period where you're feeling particularly suicidal when you're still adjusting to different medications, ketamine can be a great additive for that. So he mentioned that specifically, and that was something that caught my eye, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'd be curious to try. Not for myself. I don't experience that, but John, my partner, has had depression for 20 years, and he's spoken publicly about a few suicide attempts that he's had. So it
Oh,
did catch
wow.
my eye for, yeah. He's shared it on a couple of podcasts and on his own. He has an article on his website, johnromanello.com/depression, which is like a 7,000 word article that's gotten around quite a bit. And he's been public about that. So it caught my eye. And it's been like a really cool exploration, and it's really awesome to see so much testing going on and so much clinical usage that's been super beneficial. And I feel like I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, of just how quickly that's going to transform the medicinal healing space.
I mean, it's moving at breakneck speed, really.
Yeah,
And
I see
and
that.
again, this conversation I had last week with Peyton, he explained to me that, when cannabis was on the table, when
Right,
cannabis was being legalized, especially at the federal level in Canada, right? The whole
right.
country. You can smoke cannabis anywhere you want. You can buy it. I mean, in my
Yeah,
hometown, you can go down to the store and buy some cannabis. And, when I was younger, it was the opposite of that.
Right.
You go to
Yeah,
jail if you
super
have
go to
cannabis.
jail.
You get caught for possession, you go to jail and get a
Yeah.
criminal record, and then you're just considered a delinquent for the rest of your life. But when cannabis was on the table, it was met with a lot of skepticism because nobody thought that it could actually happen. Could you actually get cannabis legalized across
Right.
the whole country? And he was in the funding space. So he was working for private equity and funding different cannabis companies, and for him it was difficult to get the money for the cannabis companies because there was so much fear and skepticism around the success of it going legal and the management and the political ramifications and everything like that. He just raised $40 million for his new company, and
Damn.
he said it was met with basically zero skepticism. Now that cannabis
Wow.
has gone legal,
Yeah.
people are just accepting the fact that, okay, well, MDMA is next and psilocybin's next
Right.
and ketamine's next. So, he is riding the wave right now. And
That's
I
great.
don't think it's going to slow down at all. I
Yeah,
mean, you,
for
you
sure.
look at, look at the founder of Maps, Rick Doblin.
Yeah.
And I just saw an article featuring him the other day that explained his view of the future, which will have thousands of treatment centers across the
Yeah.
US offering different types of psychedelic therapies and medicines. So I think, yeah, absolutely. In 5 years, it's going to look a lot different than it does even in 3 years, probably even in two
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think, I've shared, some with my audience. I did some podcasts after I left Soltara, and people were really interested and curious, and, um, it's probably similar to where cannabis was just a couple of years ago, where people are like, "How do you get it and do it legally and safely, and where, who, what, how?" And people are interested and curious, but don't have the safe spaces. So I always recommend, like, if you want to dive in to to ayahuasca as your first one. One of the girls that I was with at the retreat, her name's Stephanie. We became really good friends after ayahuasca was her first psychedelic experience that she's ever done. So it's something that you can dive into first if you want to, but also just having spaces and safe places for people to go to access it, to try it, and to experience it for themselves. And I'm super excited for that, and I definitely see how quickly it's moving. And you guys are on the cutting edge of that too, which is super exciting. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, trying to play our part in our very small part in this big massive barrel of a wave that's coming up right now. Um, I spent a bit of time in Brazil as well, a few years ago, and worked with the Santo Daime and the União do Vegetal, these two ayahuasca religions in Brazil,
Yeah.
and they drink ayahuasca every weekend. Like that's their thing. Like
Damn.
they're psychedelics every weekend. They get together. It's like a
Uh,
social. It's like a religion, right? They get
yeah.
together. It's their social bonding, and they bring
Right.
the kids, and everyone drinks ayahuasca. They have it. They do it in a bit of a different format. But the point I'm getting at is psychedelics on the regular can be a good thing. They've done very well. These religions, very
Yeah.
beneficial for the people, and I think Dennis McKenna did a study back in the '90s with some other people on serotonin levels. So they they measured people's serotonin levels for those people who
Mm,
drank ayahuasca regularly, and they constantly had elevated serotonin. So
wow.
if you've got thousands of treatment centers around the country and people are
Yeah.
having access to psychedelics of all kinds on the regular, and you could see a transformation of culture as well. So maybe there's less
Yeah.
alcohol consumption, maybe there is more
Yeah.
mindfulness practices being done, better health being taken care of, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah, I drink less alcohol personally. Um, it's just less interesting to me now, not as like a this is less fun, but more of like I feel the difference in my body. physically of how alcohol affects my body versus how a psychedelic would affect my body. And
Hmm.
it's fascinating, like over the last couple of years of increasing psychedelic journeys versus drinking alcohol. And I wasn't a huge drinker before, but I definitely drank in college and I would have drinks casually and I do it a lot less now,
Mm.
which is
Well,
interesting.
well, that's good. That's healthy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I still
um,
have some, but
so you mentioned John. I correct in saying that you have publicly um, an open relationship?
yeah, yep,
That's
correct.
kind of an interesting topic that I never have been able to crack. I've never been able to pull that one off. Not that I've really put a ton of effort in, but I did try it a few years ago and it didn't work out very well. So,
Yeah.
what's the down low with open relationships?
Yeah, I think, what you said about trying it and it not really working out, there's from what I've learned and from what we've experienced, I've only been in this relationship in an open relationship. So, I'm not the expert end all be all of them in general, and anybody who tries it as, like, "Let me see how this goes," I always kind of say it's contextual based on the relationship that you're in. And it brings up it's kind of like a psychedelic experience because it brings up anything that's percolating under the surface to be worked on. So, if you're bringing other people in whatever capacity you're choosing to do that or you're experimenting to do that or you need to do that based on, some people identify as polyamorous people rather than just trying it out as a lifestyle. So, depending on the extent to which you're doing that, what it what it's done for me anyway is it's brought up what is what needs to be worked on in the primary relationship, whether that's feelings of safety and security or feelings of or just like integrity in communication or core wounding from childhood or past relationships that's still left unresolved and not integrated. So it'll bring up whatever is really there, and that's what we've experienced quite a bit, which has been um, it's what it's done again, similar to psychedelics, has allowed us to integrate what has been unresolved and it's funny, I keep comparing because it's like what I was gonna say is, it's like this accelerated kind of path where I don't know if I would have had the things that I've had come up, had we not been practicing in an open relationship as quickly as they did. Maybe they would have eventually come up in, like, 10 years, but it's been some pretty deep stuff, and some of the things, sometimes it can cause too much trauma or
Hmm.
too much overwhelm, like emotional overwhelm. So, if you find yourself in that space where it's too emotionally overwhelming or it's bringing up too much stuff and it's unable to be resolved, that's it totally makes sense because it can activate quite a lot. It's like taking too many psychedelics or doing too many journeys where you're not integrating things. So, a lot of integration is required. Um, what we've found is like it's really for helped us commit like deeply commit to one another is like we're lifelong partners so long as we can maintain integrity and maintain choosing each other over and over. So it's been this interesting kind of initiation into marriage in a way. Like we're going to be getting engaged and stuff. So
Oh,
things
great.
are going great with us. It's beautiful, but it feels like an initiation into like this is what deep committed partnership looks like. If you're going to be bringing external things in, you better be really foundationalized in your primary relationship. And not everybody has it like that. Not everybody has like husband and wife or whatever kind of relationship setup that you're in non-cis hetero relationships as well. Not everybody has just primary relationship, and that's not everybody's dynamic and setup. But the core of what's there, the core of what's required is emotional, physical, sexual, spiritual, energetic safety
Yeah.
and groundedness and connection and um, ability to emotionally process things with each other validate each other's experience, be able to maintain each other's like boundaries and the speed at which you're doing things and trying things, but also being committed to each other's truth, your truth, their truth, and the truth that holds the relationship together. And it's like anybody who's married, I would say, is that's the same advice they would give.
Hmm.
So all open relationship does, aside from the benefits of it, which are like more love, more connection with other people, more people that value novelty, newness, um, exploration, sexual expression, emotional expression, things like that.
Sure.
That's what it is for us. Like we really value those things as human beings. Um, but yeah, I would say that like it requires the same thing that any really long-term committed relationship requires. It just brings more up to the surface more quickly, I think.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
it's a
kids
bit
do the same thing, you know?
it's a bit of a toss up, isn't it? Like to have the newness and the novelty and that ability to be excited about a new partner,
Right.
you have to go deep on your own issues. You have to make sure
Yeah,
that you are putting the effort into processing your own issues
pretty
and
much.
in mastering your own emotions. And I think that
Yeah.
that's hard. It's really
Oh,
hard
yeah.
when you're
Not
like,
easy.
yeah, like I said, I have not had great history with that. Although I do find myself, yeah, wanting newness and novelty and, getting excited about other possible opportunities. But, if it's not permitted, it's not permitted. And you have to honor the sanctity of the relationship. So, and the
Yeah.
agreements between parties, right? It's really comes down to the agreements you form.
Yep. Yeah, uh, yeah, maintaining the agreements and continuously checking in about those agreements, and I think in the beginning of the podcast, we talked about personality upgrades or,
Hmm.
like, sense of self upgrades.
Hmm.
And I think that's possible without psychedelics. I think it's possible just in transformation, but what I've learned about myself is that there's an awesome book. I forget who the author is. John's reading it. It's on my bookshelf called Personality Isn't Permanent by Benjamin Hardy. And it's all about how your personality is malleable. And like we talked about, there are parts of our
Mm.
personalities that feel so like that's who our soul is and that's like who we are at the core, and I do believe that that still exists, and I also believe that a lot of personality traits, like for me, introversion is a personality trait that I used to cling on to a lot more than I do,
Hmm.
because I used to, looking back, feel like my needs and desires and boundaries didn't matter. So I would just, instead of confronting that and working through it, I would just be like, I get tired around people.
Hmm.
So having confronted that and worked with those three things, my boundaries, my needs, and my desires, speaking them, sharing them, maintaining them, enforcing them, I'm less tired around people. So there's malleability to who we think we are, and there is ability to change and to upgrade if we're willing to, if we value the growth enough, or if we value the relationship enough. I think there has to be like a driver underneath change.
How many of your clients are interested in working with this? How do these topics we just discussed like enter into your coaching work? And
Yeah.
what exactly are you doing with your clients?
Yeah, yeah. So I do business coaching, but because of my experiences in the world, what ends up happening is I essentially help people get really clear on what's driving them to make any sort of business decision, and not make decisions based on things they think they should be doing, who they think they should be, or something rooted in unresolved and unintegrated emotional reaction. And that was me for a long time. I was building something because I thought I had to be a certain type of person, or I would make business decisions to appease other people, or I would I got really burnt out twice before I was 25.
Hmm.
And I was like, am I going to be a 25-year-old with adrenal fatigue? I don't know about that. What am I doing here? And I had to really question myself. And I see that so much with social media. And my book that I'm writing is about how social media can be used as a mechanism for conscious awakening, which
Interesting.
is super interesting, about how we can use the platform as a mirror to see what our stuff is, and how we can actually anchor in our authenticity. And it's so noisy. There's so much input, and we're inputting and we're consuming so regularly that it's very easy to see what everybody else is doing on a regular basis and compare, and
Yeah.
to not even just consciously compare, but to unconsciously l- be in that comparative state. Like, it's this super unconscious, very kind of back of the mind state that we're just looking at somebody else, we're looking at ourselves, and we're like, are we right? Are we wrong? Are we good enough? Are we not good enough? Are they better? Are we worse? Are we doing the right thing? Are we doing the wrong thing? So, what I do with people is I help them really, like, of course, business strategy, pricing, offer development, marketing, all of that stuff, yes. And I help them get into alignment first, and I help
Hmm.
them figure out who they are, what's really driving them, what matters to them, what they really care about. Do you really care about having a $30 million company, or are you down to actually have like a couple $100,000 a year when you're doing the exact right thing that you want to be doing? And that's a huge
Right.
difference.
Yeah.
That's going to completely change the way you show up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of facing one of those decisions right now,
Yeah,
you know?
I'm sure.
Do you take
Yeah.
the safe and you know, less risky road, or that allows more lifestyle freedom and free time and flexibility and lower stress levels and all that good stuff? Or do you go balls to the wall and try to make a bigger mark on the world with a
Yeah.
much more complex and risky project?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that question too, because it's like, it depends on, of course, what you value. But with that type of question, I've always kind of gone to spirituality to help me answer that one, because it's like, if you go to what you value, if you value freedom and relaxation and all those things, you can be like, all right, well, I value this, so I'm going to pick this. But what do I value over here? The more complex, nuance, maybe working harder. Do I value leaving a legacy? It's less about values at that point and more about like accessing your intuition and connecting to what makes sense for you as like a channel for your mark on the world to do next. And
Mm,
like, what feels, alignment can oftentimes feel like ease, but it's not always the easiest choice. Alignment
yeah.
can sometimes be the harder choice, right? So
Yeah.
it's more about that, like, even if this is hard, does this feel, or can I access what is like the most spiritually aligned for me to do next, rather than what's the easiest or what's going to make me feel better in my day to day. And it could just be what's most aligned for me is to feel better. Like, for me, when I was really burnt out, I chose to not scale my business because I realized that that wasn't the business I wanted to scale. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I was like, I'm just going to do some coaching. I'm going to see what happens. And then now I partnered with somebody in a new business that's my baby, and I feel like it's going to be my big mark on the world, and we're going to scale that one together. But I would have never done that had I made the other choice.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah,
That's
I
very
don't know if that
interesting to
resonates.
think. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
What do you think about that for you?
Well, I wonder if I'd lie to myself sometimes about
Right?
stuff like this,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of assumptions in the mix. And on the one hand, yes, I believe ethically that I should do everything in my power to contribute the most I possibly can, to work the hardest I possibly can at this time, because it's like,
Mm,
I'm 39 years old. I've got maybe 10 more years where I want to really be grinding it out. And at the same time, I also don't want to take a lot of risk right now. I also
mm,
enjoy having free time. I also want to travel less. I kind of
yeah,
like my routine. I like having a whole afternoon to go for a hike and a gym session, 3 times a week. And, I like not having to worry about my business going under. Like
mm,
Soltara is pretty stable right now.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and yeah, I felt certain. I actually did a ceremony a few weeks ago, and the message
mm,
I got was like level up, scale up, take more risk, get
yeah,
better. And then yeah, I'm just wondering if I'm lying to myself when I say that, or you know,
yeah, yeah, it's an interesting question, and there's a lot of variables too. I'm
yeah.
curious if level up I've had that too, I've had that where, like, the ethical concern or even, like, the concern like, where I felt this feeling of I have the ability to do more and to
So you
help more
should.
so I should,
Yeah.
and that was pretty crippling, and, for me, the feeling of obligation was an indicator. Like, I kept coming back to feeling obligated, like, I should, I have to, I need to, and that felt like an indicator that it wasn't fully, like, doing something because you feel like you need to isn't a good enough reason for me. If there's other reasons, if I feel like I should, that shouldn't be the core reason or, like, the first reason. There should be other reasons or other drivers or other values that I get to live by taking that action or doing that project or doing that thing.
I like Elon Musk as an entrepreneur. He's probably my greatest hero in life.
Yeah,
And I look at his commitment, and this guy puts in he sacrificed and he sacrifices so much for what
yeah,
he believes is the right thing, and that nobody else can do what he's doing. So he's
yeah,
doing it all. He's building the electric cars, he's changing the energy infrastructure, he's sending people to space.
yeah,
He's giving us a global internet service that's going to open up all these underserved areas. He's transforming the planet, yet he's costing himself 100 hours of work and a ton of stress. And, he's probably
right,
not living the healthiest lifestyle. He's put on a little bit of weight.
right,
And it's like, I really like my lifestyle, you
yeah,
know, I really
yeah,
do. So, but I also feel like he's a really good example, and it's just a good thing to do, to contribute as much as you can. So,
yeah, yeah, it's a whole argument. I totally agree with you. Like, I think there are people in the world that almost turn themselves into robots to serve the mission. And that's okay. Like, that's their choice, and it's not a bad choice at all. It's obviously serving a lot of people and putting yourself aside. And, it's everyone's different with, like, their choices and what they value, like, and what they think is important for them. Um, and yeah, it's such a hard question to answer because it's so individual, but it's a good conversation to have and a good thing for everyone to sit with for themselves. Like, do I agree with the or is it for me, the lifestyle business, the lifestyle where I can do what I can and then also have what I want? Or is it for me that I sacrifice myself for the greater good and that's okay too? And it's
yeah,
such a personal question.
I would, uh, if you're taking clients, I would love to have a one-time conversation
Let's
with
do it.
you and
Love that.
share some specifics. That'd
Let's
be
do it.
amazing.
I'm in.
Oh, great, great. We can talk after. Um, so do you want to talk a little bit about your book maybe, and then we'll wrap it?
Yeah.
Or yeah,
Yeah, I'm
sure.
excited.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'm in the middle of getting my book. I sent it over to my agent, so it'll be out next year. But the book is essentially about how to utilize social media as a space to access your purpose and your alignment and who you are, who you really are. And it helps the modern day content creator essentially. So anyone that's making content online that's dealing with the challenges of what it means to be a content creator and the additional layer of struggle that you have with your identity, with who you think you are, because it's essentially an extension of our identity and we're putting it on platforms. So we're like filtering ourselves all the time. So it can create such a warped sense of self and a warped
Mm-hmm.
sense of who we are and what the world is and what reality actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And movies like or documentaries like The Social Dilemma are great, but they put the onus on the big companies to fix things, and I'm putting the onus and the responsibility back on the content creator to support themselves to really
Love that.
change their relationship with the platform.
That's
Yeah,
amazing. That's
yeah,
very exciting. And I mean, I'll definitely be picking that one up. You know, we've kind of got into this world of trying to create content, and it's a puzzle. It really is to figure out,
yeah,
and how do you show up in the world? How do you transmit your values? How do you transmit um good quality valuable content as well?
yeah,
And yeah.
yeah, yeah, and show up for people, show up for yourself. Um, there's so much there. There's a lot about shadow work in there. There's a lot about different stages of personal branding and becoming yourself and the different things that we have to deal with cancel culture and trolling, but also um, being an advocate for the things that you stand for and all of the things that people project onto you as a content creator as well. So it's like a survival guide for social media in the modern day.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, congrats on
So
that.
excited. Thank you.
And people can find you at amandabucci.com. You're on all social
Yep.
media channels. You have a YouTube channel. You got a podcast.
Yep. Podcast is Bucci Radio, and then at Amanda Bucci on Instagram is the place where I hang out the most.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for making the time today.
Yeah.
I know you're very busy. You booked this appointment like 6 or 7 weeks ago. And so I've been looking forward to it.
Yep.
And yeah, so thanks again. I really enjoyed our chat. And we'll talk later about a coaching session.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me here today too. Looking forward to it.
The Daniel Cleland Podcast.
Thank you so much, my friends, for checking out the Daniel Cleland podcast. We love you and appreciate you. If you liked what you saw, please like, subscribe, share it up with your friends and loved ones who might benefit from these episodes. And if you'd like to check out more episodes, we've got some links conveniently placed over there. So check it out, share it up. And until next time, be well. Much love to you. Thank you so much.